This is Again for the First Time with your host, Darren Redmond.
Hello, everybody, and I am so excited. Again, here's where the name of the podcast just makes so much sense because, again, for the first time, is a perfect name for what's happening right now. We've seen this gentleman play. I want to learn about his work with technology and AI. I love his affirmations in his Twitter feed and his X feed. And if you don't get it yet, we're going to talk about it. I love you to do this. First, I want to introduce Bob Feil as our guest, a veteran of the major leagues, pitched with Toronto Blue Jays. And how are you doing, sir?
Good, Darren. Pleasure to catch up with you.
So first, I want to ask you. I'm looking at your X feed right now, and so was there excitement that you were the 17,845th player, or were you holding out for the 17,844?
Yeah, it's funny. A couple of years ago, that was going around like the amount of players that had played in the major leagues, and I saw someone had a similar. I think it was Jeff Fry might have said he was at the 13,000, whatever it was, and it just blew my mind that many people like somebody put an analogy for me, like if you fill a major league stadium, it wouldn't even fill a quarter of it. With the amount of players that played in the major leagues, and it just goes to show, like, yeah, a lot of luck's involved, but it's a select group of people, and it's like a fraternity, and we all stay very close, and and it's just a small group of people. I mean, I often say, now working in the corporate world, it was like hitting the lottery. I mean, that's the chances you have to make it to that level. It's just you have to have a lot of things going for you besides talent to get to the major leagues.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I reference Ron Darling a lot, only because I'm a long-suffering Raymond fan, and I find a lot of his comments to be very learned. And he once said, "Listen, if you're really good, they'll find you, but it's up to you then that personal makeup to
Yeah.
take it that next level."
Agreed. Yeah,
Oh,
wholeheartedly. I mean, it's so true. I mean, it was by accident the way I got kind of found and kind of made it through the ranks as a pitcher. And, once you get the opportunity, you got to make the most of it. And for sure, you have to have a lot of grit and determination, not just talent, to get through to the major leagues, through the lower ranks, for sure.
you know, um, just to kind of jump into it, because I do want to talk about a lot of the work you do with technology, and I want to talk specifically about AI and some of the stuff there and the fear. But I do want to talk a little bit about your background, if you may, if we may. You, Jacob deGrom, again, Met reference, and a few others. You got moved from infield to pitcher. What
Yeah.
is that like? And is there a minute where you say, "Wait a minute, I'm a third baseman. You want to put me on the
Hmm.
mound?" And you sort of get a fearful kind of anxiety, or you're
Hmm.
like, "Hey, anything I got to do."
It's tough, right? Because growing up, I always had a pretty good arm. I played shortstop, played the infield, pitched in little league, and kind of like all the way up to like age 13, 14. But I got to high school, and I had a kind of a hard-headed head coach in high school that was he was old school, right? It was either you're a pitcher or you're a position player, you're not both. And at the time, I wanted to hit, so I was like, I was playing shortstop, and I was like, okay, I guess pitching's out, because I've been pitching all the local leagues in the Philly area, but so it wasn't foreign to me. But yeah, I didn't pitch an inning in high school. I got to college I went to college as a shortstop, second baseman, was moved to third base. I grew into my body. I was tall, I was big. I played third base all through college, and then pitched a little bit in college out of need. I went to a Division II school in Philadelphia, Thomas Jefferson University. And with a Division II school, you need two-way players, because we can't have 12 pitchers on a roster in Division II. You just don't have enough bodies. So I ultimately got on the mound a few times in their squad in practice, and my coach at the time, Don Flynn, who was a professional player himself, he said, you have a really good arm. You can help us at Division II level. And I kind of had a good idea how to pitch. I just didn't. I was more of a thrower because I threw hard. And I had natural sink on my ball, which saved me a lot, because even if I missed, even in all the way up to the big leagues, if I missed, I would get some help with the sinker. But yeah, for me, when I got drafted, I was drafted as a third baseman on paper, but I never took batting practice in the minor leagues at all. I got out to Medicine Hat, Alberta, in Canada, which is right about 2 hours north of Montana. And they said, you're going to run every day with the pitchers sitting in the bullpen, and it was a shock. It was definitely an adjustment going playing every day to that. But at the same time, it was like, okay, it's an opportunity to play professional baseball, and luckily for me, I had a really good first season. I was able to step into a closer position, a little bit of luck, a little bit of right timing, and took full advantage. And then it was after my first year of rookie ball in the minor leagues that I really, I know I often reference some of the books I have on my bookshelf here about like Nolan Ryan's pitching Bible and like the ABCs of pitching. I just studied because at the time YouTube wasn't around. You couldn't watch videos and things like that. It was back
Right.
in the 98. And so I just read and just studied up because I'm a nerd at heart. I like to read and to really educate myself. So I did that. I took everything I had mentally and put into understanding what pitching was about because I understood hitting pretty well. I understood the mindset of hitters. So that helped me kind of understand how hitters were thinking when they're in the box. So ultimately, I just being blessed with a pretty good fastball, kind of honed my skills through the minor leagues and made some significant jumps through the minors pretty quickly, and ultimately got to the big leagues as a pitcher, which is still it's still funny to me because I played, infield and hit for 21 years of my life. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden I'm a pitcher and I'm pitching in the major leagues with only 3 years experience. So it was pretty wild.
Well, that speaks to, in my opinion anyway, the testament to your athleticism, your ability to understand the game, and to be the type of person that coaches and players want to be with.
Yeah.
We all know that there are players who people who will aspire, but they don't have that sensibility of a team person, of a person that is willing to do what it takes to get there. I jump all over the map. You mentioned Nolan Ryan, one of my favorites. Um, Whatever happened to drive and drop? I mean, there weren't a lot of arm injuries. There was a nice movement on fastballs and some other things. I mean, Tom Seaver, Nolan Ryan, Jerry Kruzman, the list goes on and on and on. What happened?
I mean, there's a lot of factors go into that, and I think the first thing we're seeing with injuries today is we have a lot more visibility to things than we did before. Like, I'm one of my pitching coaches in the minor leagues was Rick Langford. I don't even
Sure.
remember that name. He pitched for the A's. He pitched 27 complete games in a row one year, and he had all kinds of arm issues. And I would talk to him about it, but we never knew about it because it never got to the media, it never got to the press. Nowadays,
Right.
every little thing is picked up
So true.
everywhere. So you're seeing a lot more of that, and ultimately the amateur game has changed tremendously. I was just having this conversation this morning with a friend of mine and his kids playing year-round baseball. I mean, it's tough, right? Because I played basketball as well, and it helps like cross-train your muscles, cross-train different things, and I think it helps ultimately you develop as an athlete. And I think what you're seeing now, like especially pitchers throwing year round and taking like a little time off, it's going to catch up to you. But what you're seeing is the outliers that really I mean, they're way ahead. I mean, you see velocities up, off speed pitches are way. I mean, there's some impressive athletes in the major leagues right now with what they're doing. So you talk about Nolan Ryan and that group of folks back then. It's just a different game. Like pitchers today in the major leagues are getting paid. Starters, for example, to pitch 5 good innings. So they're rearing back and they're just giving their all, and they're getting paid to throw 98 miles an hour for 5 innings rather than try to go nine like Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan was a freaking nature. Like even if you look at all the guys like in the middle around then, that starters used to go complete games all the time. It's just different. I think the injury you're seeing now, I mean, I have my mixed thoughts on pitch counts. I understand it for little kids. They think they're protecting them. But when I look back at, and it's only what 25 years ago, I was like, well, I mean, what I don't know. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, we would play stickball, we would throw tennis balls, we would throw footballs, we would throw all day, all the time. And I never had any injuries growing up ever. I mean, I was never hurt, and I don't know if that's a combination of playing different sports, the overuse, wear and tear of these kids playing in these leagues that are high pressure, especially some of the more competitive ones. I mean, it's a lot for kids to perform, and I think it's just trickling as the older they get, and then it's starting to creep up on them. And they're doing some really specialized training now with velocity, which is pretty. Being a techie at heart, I mean,
Mhm.
some of the things they're using is pretty advanced, pretty unbelievable, and they're able to really hone in their skill set. But that again, what price does the body pay? An unnatural ability throwing the baseball overhead. I think you're just seeing, overuse injuries, which Tommy John, that's one that's coming up quite a bit. Just that torque on the elbow. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think part of it is I'm not babying pitchers, but like these pitch counts. I coached at LaSalle University for a couple years in Philly, and I had the pitchers ready to go 100 pitches day one of the year.
Mhm.
And to get there, it's a lot of work, and it's really you have to plan it out accordingly. And there's some top tier programs that still do that type of stuff. But if you don't do that and you baby these kids' arms, I think then they get thrust into minor professional baseball. And in the minor leagues, they do a pretty good job of doing it. I know they're real strict about it now, but ultimately, when I got to the minor leagues, it was like, oh, we just throw you out there no matter what. I pitched like 5 days in a row one time, and you just have to, and you don't want to get cut, you don't want to do bad, so you just go out there and do whatever it takes. And I think so it's kind of a loaded question. There's so many factors, and nobody can pinpoint it because it's snowballed, right? It's all the way down to the 8-year-old level. So I think you'll start to see a shift a little bit, but I think the game's starting to come around. Like I'm watching a lot of baseball this year, and I find it to be entertaining because I'm in the tech, I'm into the analytics. Like me and Jeff Fry, we're pretty close friends, and he is completely old school. I'm kind of in the middle, right? Like I think if I had all that tech when I was playing, it would have hurt me because I would have overanalyzed everything. I would have been like trying to change everything all the time. And I think, but it would have helped me in a lot of ways too, because I think it's really cool. So it's it's tough. It's tough to pinpoint because me and Jeff have this conversation all the time. You see it on Twitter with Jeff. I mean, Jeff is in a league of his own with things, and there's it's like any other profession. There's good and bad and ugly, and that happens in amateur sports too. People can make really good money, and they're going to try to have the next cool thing to do with a kid. Because like I give lessons occasionally, and I'll help out kids I know, parents with kids, but it's nothing earth breaking, shattering, where it's like, so I'm not using some kind of PVC pipe crazy. Like I don't have anything that really, like, parents that don't know any better are like, oh wow, look at this inventive thing they're doing. I must be getting better. So parents don't know either. Parents just do what's best for their kids, and they just don't know any better. And so
you remind, there's so much that I want to unpack from that. You kind of
I threw a lot at you.
you teed up, you teed up a couple of things I wanted to ask about, but to that last point, I have somebody who's a friend who played in the NHL, Kevin Kaminsky,
Mhm.
and he played with the Washington Capitals for 4 years. And I bring that up because I would see him on occasion. He, full disclosure, trained my son for a while. And you'd be amazed at the rudimentary basics that the pros like yourselves, like Kevin, they do. There's no
Yeah.
PVC pipe. There's no
Mhm.
strings. There's
Mhm.
it's the fundies. It's the fundamentals.
Yep.
They've been working pretty good for 150 years.
Yep.
That sort of thing. So not from a enjoyment aspect, but from a pitcher injury aspect. We talk about data, right? You like the technology. What are your impressions on the pitch clock? Is it hurting, leading to injuries, or not?
I don't think so. I mean, I love the pitch clock. I wish it was there when I played because I pitched. I quick pitch a lot. I was fast worker. I worked fast. I wasn't one of these. I was quick, really quick. So it never bothered me at all.
Mhm.
I don't think injury wise, because the pitch clock's pretty long. You have a pretty good amount of time. I mean, a lot of times when you look at the pitch clock, a lot of it was on the hitters stepping out of the box and doing things rather than the pitcher taking long. Now there's pitchers that take like very long with their delivery and things like that and getting ready, but I always had, because I always quick pitch, so I would have hitters step out of the box, fix their batting gloves, fix this, that. And I think it's harder on the hitters sometimes than it is on the pitchers at this point. That's what I'm seeing, at least, because a lot of hitters had a routine where they step out and now they have to be a little quicker with that. I think it's the one rule that has sped up the game quite a bit, which was needed because it was getting a little out of control. I think that's one that's I just don't think injuries have anything to do with the pitch clock. Personally, I really don't.
It's
I
good
was
to
trying
know.
to correlate it. I don't see it because I saw some things on TV and some debates about it, and I don't think so. I mean, I haven't really thought that.
No, that's good. That's good to know, especially from a pitcher's perspective. It's interesting because I covered the Fresno Grizzlies for about 4 or 5 years, and they were AAA for the San
Yeah.
Francisco Giants, Astros. Nationals, and now they're single A for Colorado post COVID. And I bring all that up because we had a pitch clock, we had the larger bases, and the pitch clock worked pretty darn well. I thought, but then I started to hear people talk about the injuries this year and trying to correlate it to that. That's why I love that you gave that opinion, because that's something that, again, I can't speak to.
Yeah.
So here's one thing I loved baseball my whole life. I was never talented enough to play. I ended up playing football. Listen to some of these old plays that we already talked about. They used to say, well, I was setting them up for the third time I would face them. That pitchers probably nowadays aren't even thinking about that anymore. And when you played, did you do that? All right, here's what I'm going to do the first time. Here's what I'm going to do the second time.
Yeah, I mean, I was a short reliever, so basically I closed in the minor leagues through 1-2 innings max, and then in the big leagues I was a short reliever. So I pitched, although one outing I had 4 innings, but I was mostly 1-2 inning guy. But I did that in at bats for sure, because, and then sometimes I overthought things too, which I gave up like a monstrous home run to Manny Ramirez one time when I thought.
And you put that on X.
I know, because I'll never forget it. I
I
never forget it. I faced Manny Ramirez like, I don't know how many times, 10 times in my career, and I always got him out. And then at one at bat, I thought he would be looking for a sinker in. So I was like, let me start him with something on the outside corner, and it just didn't get the outside. He crushed it. And I was like, I should have just stayed in. Because some hitters, like a Manny, for example, sees the ball, hits ball. Like you do a scouting report on the team, and he's one of those guys that's so talented. He sees the ball and hits it. That's what the best hitters do. Guess hitters, there's some really good ones that guess and guess correctly most of the time. But I think for me, having to throw one pitch to set up another pitch, or knowing I face this guy 5 other times, I know he knows I start him with this pitch all the time. I'll start it this time or do that, or I'll throw a breaking ball first. So you try to mix it up like that. But a lot of times you can overthink yourself too. It depends on the hitter. Some hitters, like I said, some hitters are guessing. Some hitters are really thinkers in there. Some hitters are just see ball, hit ball. And that's at every level. And I think from a starting pitcher point of view, I see it a little bit. There's some really, the Philadelphia Phillies, who I grew up in Philly, they have a really good team this year. And I see some of their pitchers really do that well now, even though they're starting to let pitchers go a third time through the order. It was only 2 times through the order, and they were taking them out. But you can tell, you kind of see that, and that's kind of smart. You don't want to show them everything up front the first time around, things like that. So it still happens, but I know what you're saying. Like I do watch some games where, like the Brewers, for example, started a reliever 2 of the games. The same reliever started the game through 1 inning and was out of the game. It was like a bullpen game. They do that now. So I don't know what kind of. I mean, I get it from if there are injuries and things like that, but to see that in the big leagues when you have minor league guys ready to go and you can call them up at any time, that kind of surprised me. Like, why not call a starter up from AAA and let them go start? So I think that's kind of odd, because then you don't see that strategy as much. I think the best pitchers in the league still do that, unless they're like that Paul Skeens guy from Pittsburgh. I mean, what a fun guy to watch pitch. I mean, he knows what he's doing too. Like he knows how to pitch, and he's only going to get better, and he throws astronomically hard. But I think you're right. I think you see less of that because, I was just talking about this the other day. Like you'll see a catcher set up on the outside corner to a lefty with a righty pitching, and I saw a right-hander throw the first pitch and almost hit the guy in the head. And I was like, how does that even happen? Like a big league pitcher, you miss by that much? I mean, it happened multiple occasions, and they're just throwing like 98 miles an hour as hard as they can. So you see a combination. Again, back to my point earlier, I think we have a lot more access to games, film, highlights. We're seeing so much more than we used to see. And it's kind of, we're scrutinizing a lot more things than we used to too. So that's where so I think at the big league level, there's still, I mean, top notch guys that really understand strategy, really smart. Like the biggest takeaway I got from pitching the big leagues was how smart, how intelligent the players were all around. That separated big leaguers from AAA guys always. I mean, yeah, you have some super talented guys that are just, box of rocks here and there. But for the most part, 95% of the guys were, I mean, not as talented as a lot of the guys I play with in the minor leagues. Like, I'm talking about guys like me, not like your Carlos Delgados of the world, your Manny Ramirez's. I'm talking about mid-level players that they just knew how to pitch, they knew how to hit, they knew how to be consistent and disciplined. And I think that separated, because I played with some guys in the minor leagues that never got through AA, and they were incredible. I mean, it's unbelievable they never pitched in the big leagues or even played in the big leagues. So So I guess my point is kind of long-winded, but you
Not at
see it,
all.
you see it more. I'm watching more baseball this year. I was saying this to the other day. I watch more baseball this year than I had in the last since I stopped playing in 2005. And I think it's because for me, the all the players I played against or with are now recycled out of the game. Like Albert Pujols was the last guy I played with, and he retired last year.
Mhm.
So so I think it's easier for me to watch not knowing personalities and people, and like it's just easier. I like watching my old friends, they're managers now, and they're working in front office. So it's fun seeing this new group of players that were basically little leaguers when I played, and kind of see how the game's changed. There's no doubt about that. But again, there's still enjoyment in the way the game's played now. Then because the athletes are incredible. I mean, you look at middle infielders now. I mean, they're 6'4", 6'5". They hit for
Yep.
power. I mean, they're incredible. So you just got to take it with what every generation says it too, right? Like you've mentioned Nolan Ryan,
Mhm.
Tom Seaver, like then it was Jeff Fry's generation, like
Yep.
in the '80s and the '90s, and it's like every generation says it about the previous generation. Like they're not as tough, they're not as. But look at the athletes. I mean, you look at some of these guys that, I mean, are put together. Like you look at like Aaron Judge. I mean, this guy.
Mhm.
I mean, there wasn't anybody built like him in 1980. I mean, maybe Dave
Nope.
Parker or something like that, but
Parker,
I
yeah.
mean, you look at these guys and they're just, I mean, they're incredible to watch because they're
Yeah.
fast. I mean, he plays center field. I mean, he's
You know,
6'6". I mean, it's unbelievable. So I think if you come to that, because I often talk to Jeff about this, Jeff Fry, and he's very stubborn and old school. And I said, you have to loosen up a little bit if you want to enjoy the game because it's not changing. And he targets the amateur game a little more, which I agree with a lot of the shenanigans that are going on that level. But the big league level, I think the game's just changed. I think it's more of entertainment. It's always been entertainment, but it's becoming more of that. Like players have their own brands now. They're doing things outside of baseball, setting themselves up. Like for
mhm.
me, like I was lucky enough to have a degree in a pretty lucrative field coming out of college. And if I didn't have that, I mean, you have to have a plan after because you spend most of your life not playing baseball, especially someone like me, never got a big contract or anything like that. So I just think it's again this year's I turned the corner this year. Watching the game, really enjoying it. Like I look forward to these games now, and it's kind of it's been entertaining this year for me.
A couple things there. One, again, I mentioned that, I covered minor league baseball when I lived out in California. I lived there for 16 years. I also covered Fresno State. And a couple of things. One, when they won the national championship 12 years, 18, whatever it is, 12, 13 years ago, 14, more than that now, they actually beat Georgia by pitching by committee. Two
Mm,
innings, two innings, two innings, that kind of thing. You know,
yeah,
but I want to bring up the fact that nobody came to see Aaron Judge play at Fresno State. And I use that because he works his tail off. This gentleman works and studies the game. And when I say nobody came to see him, they thought he was a good player, could hit for
right.
power. But to your point, nobody thought he could play center field, right field, wherever you put him, be a solid, just unbelievable home run hitter. So that's just good hard work. Uh,
Yeah.
so I wanted to ask you, kind of transition to what you're doing now with tech,
Hmm.
and maybe talk a little bit about AI, something that I'm very interested in. But before we do that, I talked to another gentleman who played football, um, and he mentioned about how it's really hit and miss by teams.
Hmm.
Um, when players are about to leave post career. Again, not throwing any arrows at anybody, but is there at least when you were playing, a structure thing? This is, hey, this is not going to last forever, people.
Hmm.
Here's what you kind of want to do with yourself. You want to put this much coin away. You may want to do this. Um, Walk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, not really. There's a little more things in place now. I know that from talking to guys that are playing, talking to agents and talking to people involved in the game. There is a little more of that now, and players are more self-aware of things that can be done. Like I know, like a polarizing character in Marcus Stroman, like he has a lot of things going on outside of his, and he's doing very well with that. He's
Mhm.
created his own personal brand, and you
Brand,
see a lot
yeah.
of play, and I can appreciate that. I mean, I think it takes a lot of work to do that, and I think, but he also went to Duke, so he's a super intelligent guy. Um, but I think ultimately, like when I played before I got to the big leagues, they sent two players from every team to like this Major League Baseball development thing in Washington D.C. for like a long weekend, and you would go there and you learned everything from etiquette around finances to what to do, what not to do. I mean, all kinds of cool stuff. And but we were also all like 21 years old, and so to really take that in and really appreciate and really understand it, even someone like me, who I consider myself a pretty intelligent guy, you're
Mhm.
21, you're not thinking of when you're 40. You're just not.
No.
You're just like, I'm playing baseball. I wasn't in the big leagues yet. That was my goal. It was a good thing they did, this development thing. But so ultimately they didn't when I played. They didn't have any, especially for minor league guys that never make it to the big leagues and have no nest egg, no money made. It's extremely challenging when you're done, especially if they never finish school. Um, for me, I was lucky or unlucky enough to get hurt in 2003 or 2002-ish, and I missed a full season, but I was on a major league roster. So I was able to put away a lot of the money that year while I was rehabbing and kind of save that and have a little bit of a nest egg for me. And then ultimately, like I said earlier, I was lucky enough to graduate a computer science degree, which is very valuable still today. And having that backbone to lean on when I got done baseball. I mean, I got done baseball. I was in spring training with the Cardinals. I finished playing in May of that year in 2005, 4 or 5. And by July, I was working for one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world, in AstraZeneca. So I was lucky enough to really, in 2 months,
Beautiful.
and it's mostly players talking to other players. Like there was a couple former players. That's what got me into the pharma space, the life sciences space, and they helped me kind of navigate like, oh, what to do next. Like it depends on who your circle of people are. You kind of associate with when you're playing professional sports too. Like I always associate with all the guys that I knew were just like me, right? Like very
Mhm.
driven, like everyone is at that level. But thinking about life after baseball, I always stay friends with these guys. They would retire, be like, "What are you doing now?" Kind of really network, kind of like what I do today, kind of networking, get to know people. And but like formally, there was nothing then. I know there's more now, a little more now. The Major League Baseball Alumni Association does some really cool things, which I'm associated with still, where you can get help from them, and they put you in touch with like resume writers and
Oh,
like
good.
help you. Like they do cool things like that. So that's all a great thing being part of the association. So it's gotten a lot better for sure. I just think what the dollars that are involved in the game now, especially even the major league minimum, I think it's like close to 600K a year, or maybe I don't even know. With that, you can make a couple years in the big leagues. You can set yourself up at least for some padding to get yourself started in whatever you do. Like, um, but it's a tough transition. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, it took me a good 5 years to kind of come to grips with like what is this? It's just tough. Even today, sometimes it can be challenging just because of the when you're playing professional baseball, minor league baseball, major league baseball, whatever it is. Every 99% of the guys I played with are driven and disciplined to a level that the average person doesn't understand, in my opinion. I mean, it's you're playing with guys just driven like no other. And it's good because you put you in an atmosphere where it's so competitive and it ups your game. It makes you better. There's always somebody better than you. There's always somebody doing more than you. And I see in the professional world, there's people like that. They're very successful, but there's also everybody has a job, right? So you have everybody else. Where in professional baseball, you don't have everybody else. No, but
Mhm.
everybody else doesn't make it. They stop playing in high school. They stop playing in college, and then they. So I think the level of grit and determination, discipline and consistency that's helped me today for sure. That's. But I think it can be a challenge for a lot of guys. A lot of guys I play with, run baseball camps, clinics, run facilities because all they know is baseball. Most of them work in the game still, which can be good if you're at a high level. So, because a lot of them didn't have a degree or some kind of skill set to fall back on. So it can be a real challenge. But like I said, when you're 21, 22 years old, you're not thinking about what's next. You're just so focused on what's at hand, and then one day it stops, and you're like, well, it kind of hits you in the face.
So the person that I mentioned earlier who played football, his name's Kevin Swain. He played with the Jets, and I bring that up because he said that he was just to your point. He was able to network. He was very fortunate because he played in New York, New Jersey. That the NFL headquarters was there, so he met the right people. So post career,
Hmm.
you could do some things. Yeah, it just
Yeah.
you got to make the most of your opportunities, and that might not have happened if he played at another location.
Yeah,
Um,
very true. Very true. I always say that. Part of me, I loved playing in Toronto. I loved living there. I loved it. But if I was to play in like my hometown where I live now, like in Philly,
Mhm.
I mean, the opportunities would have been different
Yep.
because I would have known a lot of people. I would have got connected to people just because, like, I know a lot of people in Toronto still, but I don't live in Toronto. And even in tech, I've met people I've worked with in Toronto, and they still remember me from Toronto. And it's, like you say, where you kind of play, that makes a huge difference too. Like I know guys that played in Boston. I mean, they're connected for life. That play at Boston, like Philly, like all the New York. I mean, you play in these big cities and you do half decent for a couple of years, you're setting yourself, talk about a great network of people because they'll want to hire you in some capacity.
Absolutely. And again, the flip side of that, and I could talk about this because we talked about it on the podcast a couple times. I mentioned Kevin Kaminsky earlier, and you made some good money, and he played even before you, but not great money. Um, and then you realize that for him, he would say that the place you wanted to get to was a retirement package,
Yeah.
Stay in the league long enough for that.
Yeah.
And in his story, and this stuff that the average fan, it's not their fault, doesn't understand it. These are human beings.
Right.
So the year that he was going to at least reach that mark, the NHL went on strike.
Oh,
And the Players Association and the league did not have an agreement that time counted. So he
yeah.
finished 35 games short of a retirement package.
Uh,
You know,
yeah. Well,
so
you talk about retirement. I mean, one great thing about baseball is the pensions start day one in the big
mm,
leagues. So there's 10-year max, and then it's prorated off of that. And you can start taking your pension at 45. I'm 47 now.
mm,
I haven't started taking anything yet, but I mean, I get 3.5 years worth
yeah,
of a 10-year max, which is decent amount if you're. I mean, it's not terrible. It's not enough to live on,
mhm,
but the 10
right.
year pension is great, and that's the goal. You see major league players get to 10 years. That's like the ultimate goal, the 10-year mark. But I know a lot of sports don't have that. You have to play like 4 or 5 years to get
Yep.
any type of pension, which can be challenging.
And now what he said in the NHL now, if there is a strike, it does count, which is a
Uh,
good thing. But I
yeah.
want to quickly go to talk a little bit about technology. What are you doing right now in technology? And why, as a society, are we so afraid of AI?
Wow. Well, I mean, the past, I guess, 15 years or so, I mean, 20 years since I stopped playing, I was involved in the life science pharmaceutical space. And I went back to LaSalle University to get my master's degree in computer science back in 2010 because I really wanted to up my technology kind of clout in the industry. And when I was there, I met a lot of good people in this space. And I coached baseball there. I was lucky enough to coach in Division I, be a pitching coach there. I had a lot of fun doing that for 2 years. And I think for me, it was, getting into tech because I stayed in the pharmaceutical space. So basically, the bulk of my career has been working with pharmaceutical companies in general. And in the last 5, 7 years, I worked a lot with clinical trial software. So any clinical trials that are out there, there's a lot of software behind the scenes that kind of makes those trials work, and kind of all the data aggregates, like all the things you would need to run a multi-billion-dollar clinical trial. There's software involved in that. And so I've kind of been really heavily in the medical and commercial space there. So that's been rewarding. It's been good. I met a lot of good people. Most recently, the last 2 to 4 years, kind of really dug in with data analytics. A couple of years at a company called IQVIA I worked at, where I work closely with, clinical trials. They can be hundreds of thousands of patients in trials. There's a lot of data coming from that, from vital signs to, efficacy endpoints of drugs, and if a drug can be available to the public. I'll save you all the minute details there, but ultimately, I've learned a lot about that space and getting involved in the data analytics part, because data analytics is becoming everything in the world in general. AI started popping up its head a little bit back for me about 5 years ago, where you start hearing the buzz of people wanting to do things and incorporate it in software to sell to clients and really have it make things more efficacious, replace different processes, things like that. And I thought it was extremely interesting, but it was in its infancy. And then I went to another company, and there we worked on really a true artificial intelligence product for the medical affairs space in pharmaceuticals. And medical affairs is basically the medical folks that kind of make decisions on drugs. Make it simple, like they're the PhDs, the PharmDs, the really medical folks on the pharma side. And the AI tool was going to basically make them more efficient. Basically, give them insights into their data that we often say the way it's done today, still a lot of these companies, they'll use consulting firms, they'll use people, and they'll come up with these insights around, okay, this doctor across the world is using a drug for this, and this. And it takes months, 6 months to a year to formally decide whether a drug needs a new indication or not. For example, like a drug, they prescribe this drug for heartburn, but it might be useful for another condition. But they have to go through all the data and figure that out. Now with AI can comb through all kinds of data sources in a matter of minutes. And that's the difference, the efficiency involved. Like people get all scared. You mentioned the scared AI, and I've seen that with clients, like when you're presenting, when you're showing a product. And the biggest thing I've seen since the explosion of ChatGPT and like AI in the mainstream, that happened about a year and a half, 2 years ago, where everybody's like, oh, what is this? And everything exploded. And it was good for the AI space, but people had a misunderstanding of what it actually is. Like, oh, it's going to replace my job. I'm going to lose my job. And I think the biggest thing I try to tell people, which I've done myself, is embrace it and make yourself better with what the tools you have at hand. And you don't have to be extreme techie to use AI tools that are available publicly now. But I think ultimately it's going to make things more efficient, just like tech has done. It's made people more productive, and AI is going to do the same thing. And I don't think necessarily it's going to replace thinkers. Like AI can't strategically think. So you can't make human decisions. It can make calculated decisions, but not like true human emotional decisions where you need to, I always say AI is a good first draft. Like you can use AI for something, like if you're going to, write a script for a podcast, you can use that, pump out a first draft of what you need, and then go through it and kind of use your mind to make it tailored to you and your audience. So I think that's the biggest thing. And people there's going to be two groups of people. There's the scared people that are going to stay away from it for a little bit and wait till it's a little more mature. And then the others are going to jump in early, and they're probably going to come out winners because AI is not going away. It's only going to get, and it's growing exponentially at a rate. Like tech has always grown crazily. Like ever since 2000, I mean, tech has exploded. This is growing X times that now. Like I'm seeing changes within a year that are just astronomical. So I think you embrace it, you use it for whatever you're doing, whatever role you're doing, kind of just embrace the tools you have at hand. I'm lucky enough to work in the tech space. Like I'm working on a current role where I'll be working more in the clinical trial space again. And, you kind of use it to your advantage. And I think it's normal to be kind of like intimidated by, especially not non-techies. Like I can totally understand that because it's only what you hear through media, through channels outside, social media. You don't truly understand it, so you kind of get afraid of it. It's like anything else. It's like my mom with her iPhone. She's like scared of it half the time. And if you just sit back and just take it in and just really try to understand what it's going to help you with, it makes it a lot easier. And I think that's kind of where we are today, in my opinion, at least.
No, listen, I totally agree. I preach to the choir on that. I love hearing that. I mean, and as somebody who is, I'm 58 years old, and I'm somebody who leans heavily into AI. Not because you want to be with the latest greatest things, that's part of it, but it's here and it's relevant. And I plan on being around, productive, and getting a paycheck for another 20 years. Well, I'm going to lean heavy into that. So right now, for example, I'm on vacation from my job as a special education teacher, and I'm spending, and I don't mean this with any hubris, 4 hours every day learning about prompt technology, and you know what, people, it's not that difficult. It's like learning a language. That's all you're doing. And it just makes sense, and play with it. A lot of it's free. And like I tell people who are my age or younger, actually, and afraid they're going to lose their job and this and that, I said, listen, we don't churn butter anymore.
And covered wagons are gone.
Yes, exactly. So, for example, I said, 2 years ago, Grammarly was this great
I love
thing.
Grammarly.
Yeah. But with ChatGPT, is it going to be antiquated soon? At least the paid model? Who knows?
Well, that's the thing. Does Grammarly incorporate AI into their product and then become even better? That's what you're seeing now. Like a lot of these products, like Microsoft's, the Googles, they're really going full steam ahead and bolting it onto PowerPoint, all the Microsoft products, which again, some people feel like it's getting forced down their throat, but those companies are looking at it like, no, they can complement what we do good already and make it even better. And that's the way I look at it. Like if you're strictly an AI only company, I think, in my opinion, it's really hard to be successful because in this market today. Because if you're just trying to sell AI, like this software does this AI, that's it, to a client base for like an enterprise corporate type deal, it's going to be hard. Now, if you're complementing what you already have and really making it like Microsoft's doing, Google's doing it, I mean, they're all doing it pretty well. I think you can just, it's an added benefit and makes people go, wow. And I think that's crucial right now.
You know, before I let you go, one thing of the many I really enjoy about your social media postings, and I mentioned it at the beginning of our conversation. Again, thank you so much, Bob File, for being with us today, being with me. I love your positive affirmations, and it just feels intrinsic and real. How did you come about
I'll
that?
start.
Yes.
It's pretty funny. A lot of it started back when I was coaching at LaSalle back in 2012. We had a lot of things we did to players and things like that. But ultimately, it started with like Twitter, where I was able to, I wrote a bot, like a program that would automate tweets when you could do it for free. And I would put all different types of motivational quotes, this and that. And it really started when it's funny, when I had a little girl 4.5 years ago, and I was up late nights, all night feeding, doing, and so I would always be playing around with Twitter. And that's when me and Jeff Fry really connected again. And we created this whole She On movement that you see on Twitter. And
Which I love.
him and Not Gayati would be up at like 3 a.m. and we'd be talking through a text thread and trying to think of the next video Jeff was going to do in the beginning and things like that. But I think for me, it was more kind of like creating that brand around, okay, positivity. I mean, the amount of followers, the amount of people I've met on Twitter, it's pretty unbelievable. I mean, I still call it Twitter, but X.
Yeah.
It's the network of people through baseball and just through in life, like the people I've met people for lunch that I never knew and just I became friends with them. Like Not Gayati, he's a big Twitter guy or X guy, deep into baseball statistics and analytics, and he always posts some really cool stuff. And like we become close friends. I went to his wedding, so things like that. But I think ultimately the positivity, it's just, I mean, I'm a pretty glass half empty guy a lot, unfortunately, because I'm always looking at what could happen instead of what's good happening sometimes. And I think it really was for myself trying to stay a lot more positive, a lot more kind of look at things in a better way. And that happened about 5 years ago. And I think there's no coincidence I had a daughter then too, my first child. So that
Beautiful.
changes perspective quite a bit on life in general. So I think, then the hashtag powerful started, and that started way back when, and it's kind of created a life of its own. I would be doing a lot more if the tools were available at a decent price. Like ever since Elon took over X, he started charging a lot. He started charging a lot for the API use and things like that. So I can't do as much cool things as I used to do. At least I could, but I just don't want to pay astronomical amount of money right now. Right. But I think the platform allows for just some really cool stuff. Like I do it for fun. It's mostly a fun thing. I'm not trying to make money off it or anything like that. Like it's more just trying to create a network of people. And the amount of people who reach out to me like yourself, like I've met so many people where it's like, oh, it's like podcasts I've done. I mean, I enjoy just having conversations, meeting new people. And it's created like a whole nother social circle of people I know now. And you never know, right? Nope. You never know. Like, I mean, I just talked to an individual the other day who I met through Twitter 5 years ago. And he put me in touch with another guy who's like a tech billionaire. And we had a chat and it was pretty productive. Like this guy he's a good guy to know for me in the tech world. So you never know who you're going to be connected to. And I think it's just, just be genuine, be yourself, and things work out typically. At least that's what I'm starting to see, hopefully.
I think that is a great way to end this conversation. And again, for people who might try to find you, and you should, how do they find you on Twitter?
It's at Bob File, BOBFILE.
All right, that's pretty simple, people. You can't mess that up. Bob, I want to thank you very much for being my guest today, and all the best to you. And this was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, Darren, appreciate it. Anytime.
We'll talk down the road. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.